Welcome to the People Leaders Podcast, the audio resource for managers and business leaders creating high-performing teams. Join leadership and team development experts Jan and Michelle Turkelson each week as they explore both subjects from every angle. Through practical tips, valuable insights, and compelling interviews with leadership experts around the world, you'll learn how to bring out the best in your staff and how to give your best as a leader.
Hey Michelle.
Hi Jan. So, what are we going to talk about today?
We are going to talk about one of the most impactful behavioural models that we've both agreed that we've come across in the last, 18 years.
Great, I can hardly wait.
Well, let's get straight into it.
Okay.
And I imagine that a lot of people have understood or know this term above the line and below the line.
That's right.
And we're not just going to have a look at above the line and below the line behaviours, we're also going to broaden it into a mindset, the language, feelings, body, even body language.
That's right, and thinking styles.
Yeah.
So where does this above the line and below the line terminology model come from?
So apparently it was first developed by Robert Kiyosaki. And as a lot of people I imagine would know, his notable works are Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And our reference came into our line of sight was through Carolyn Taylor and her book, which is an absolute classic, Walking the Talk, which is around bringing cultural change into an organisation.
Yeah, and she refers to above the line and below the line and references Robert Kiyosaki as someone who introduced it to her. So I don't know if he actually developed it or he was the one that introduced it to Carolyn.
20 years ago, I know. And then we've been doing research from it. And so there have been a number of books that have written about it, but we just wanted to reference those that we know. So we're going to explore what that model is, but also how to bring it to life, because that's what we want to give to you is, so what's that, what's in it for me? And one of the things that I think about this tool or resource that's so impactful is it's really bringing values to life in such a tangible way. And the teams that we've worked with who have used this model, it has absolutely galvanized the way in which they operate because it's made it clear, tangible, and brings it to life.
Yeah, so let's expand what we mean by above the line and below the line, and then people will get a real clear understanding about how they could apply it in their own lives and in their own teams.
So imagine you've got a blank piece of paper and that you draw a line through the centre of it, a horizontal line. And so above the line has got aspects of ownership, accountability,
responsibility.
Yeah, and the line really signifies this line of choice is how do I choose to respond to a situation as opposed to react? And I think that's the key around responsibility is that your ability to respond to a situation. And then below the line are things like
denial, excuses, being defensive, blaming.
Yeah, so it's all around, you've got the positive energy at the top, which is above the line, and the negative low energy is usually at the bottom, below the line. So let's have a look at how we see these like behaviours and feelings and mindsets and above the line and also below the line, and give you some examples of how it can actually come about. And the reason why this is so important is because when you have a team or a group of people who are operating more in above the line behaviours, you are going to get more effective outcomes. You are going to be able to do things quicker with less, and you're going to be leveraging your strengths. So overall, you're just going to be more effective. So, and that's the reason why it's so important to actually have this in your toolkit and then use it.
That's right.
Yeah. And who needs to know this?
People leaders. Everyone. everyone.
Like even your family.
Yeah.
Like we've used it with our family. And again, it's a physical activity where you kind of like draw a line on a piece of paper and go, oh, what's happening? You know, and you start to have a conversation.
And it is like that drawing the line in the sand. And that's exactly what it is. It's like, okay, so what does it mean to cross that line? And what we're talking about is below the line is like crossing the line.
Yeah.
And so let's explore it from so we'll give people some perspective on, what would be a thinking style if it was above the line and below the line. What are some behaviours and go from there. So why don't we start with some thinking styles of concepts above the line. So if I was thinking above the line, what sort of thinking would I be going through in my mind?
I would be thinking about possibilities. Also, I'd be thinking about how do I accept what's happening to me without blaming someone else? Like, where is my responsibility in this? So I could have a problem, and instead of going, as soon as pointing it to someone, okay, so where can I take some ownership or accountability? How did I contribute to this? What could I be doing differently? So that's a real thinking style. And also it's just having a positive attitude.
That's right.
Michelle, the thinking of, positivity.
Positivity. And we love the idea of using curiosity in the above the line concept of thinking. So it is about, staying curious and where is my role in this situation or this problem that we've identified, and how can I make a difference? So it is about you being able to respond effectively to this situation, and how can I involve the right people? Might be another thing that you could be thinking if you were thinking above the line.
Yeah. And if you were thinking above the line, you would be helpful. You would be seeing how you can be of service to someone
How can I cooperate? How can I support?
How can I add value?
Right.
Yeah? And you do that by actually starting with an intention, which is something that we're going to have a look at. So how do I actually, bring this into place? So that's the thinking style of above the line.
So below the line, as you can imagine, it might be, they're wrong. It's got to be my way. Look, I need more detail. I don't really trust what they're saying.
And I suppose, this thinking style is you're protecting.
Yeah.
You're really protecting yourself and being really risk averse.
Yeah, protecting and defending, aren't you? Yeah.
That's right. And even when you're protecting and defending, you can either be really passive about it by, keeping low and not contributing in team meetings, or contributing outside the team meeting. By the way, this is what I actually think. So that's an example of that. And the thinking style could be aggressive though, but also protecting yourself. So instead of defending, you're attacking. Yeah. And so with that, it's really trying to avoid criticism, losing control, or even avoiding losing control, because control of your work or control of power, that kind of thing.
Okay, so let's have a look at feelings, above the line and below the line feelings. So like we said before, some of the feelings above the line are things like, yes, being open and curious, compassionate, empowered,
and even being enthusiastic.
Yeah.
And how do you know that you're enthusiastic? There is an energy to the body and the system when you're enthusiastic. And even though we're kind of saying all these words to you, when you're listening to this podcast, I want you to do a bit of a checklist. When is the last time that I've been curious about something? And then, have I actually actioned it? Have I looked it up? Have I Googled it? Have I had a conversation about something that I'm interested in?
That's right. And when was the last time I was curious about something or enthusiastic about something that somebody mentioned in the team meeting or at work?
And it's those things that come up in you that go, oh, yes, I'm interested in that. And then you do it. This is someone who is acting above the line. Yeah. So they're actually connecting with their feelings and then taking action. So they're action oriented.
So let's have a look at some of the below the lines feelings and emotions. So we would have maybe frustration, impatience.
They'd be suspicious.
Suspicious, yeah.
So why are you helping me out?
Yeah. Resentful.
Urgent. So everything is urgent.
Yeah.
I need to have it tomorrow.
Now.
That's right. That's right.
It would be fear-based. They'd be tense.
And also disconnected. And you know when people are disconnected because their thoughts, words and behaviours are not aligned. That's when you know that they're disconnected and they're stressed and they're overwhelmed. They're in overwhelm. So they're those feelings above the line and below the line. And so when we've just been speaking about that, just do a little bit of a checklist for yourself. In your state, your body state, have you had more feelings of above the line or below the line? And you'll know, because if you've had more feelings in above the line, you feel good.
Yeah, that's right. Your body doesn't lie. You can feel it at the end of the day. Are you exhausted or are you energized? Are you satisfied or are you dissatisfied?
Yeah. So let's have a look at body language, do you think? Or our body, the physical?
Yeah, definitely. So what are some of the above the line feelings that you'd have in your body, for example?
So you would be calm and you would have even breaths. And the even breaths is something that takes awareness and consciousness. So you have to be really conscious, because when we are excited, which is a good thing, sometimes we can be in overwhelm and anything turned up becomes a weakness.
Yeah, so enthusiastic is probably a nice above the line feeling there. Now, in terms of the body and how you would be physically above the line, you might be more relaxed in terms of eye contact, or it would be steady.
And you would actually have eye contact
with
Michelle.
someone. True.
Yeah, and we were talking about this the other day, is that a lot of people say it's important when you're speaking and presenting to actually make eye contact with people and land on people for at least 2 to 3 seconds. What they don't mention is that when someone is talking to you or presenting to you, it's your responsibility as well to make eye contact with them. That's right.
Yes.
And hold their gaze.
Yeah.
And match the energy, because you will get what you put out. Yeah, you always get in what you put out.
So what are some of the below the line bodies languages that you'd have?
Okay, holding your breath.
Yeah.
So that when your shoulders are tight, tension in your muscles, and when you feel pressure in your head, shallow breaths, when you're when there's butterflies in the stomach. And it's interesting, isn't it? The butterflies in the stomach, as opposed to this, and it's interesting, this calm excitement, because calm excitement is that you're prepared and you're eager, whereas butterflies in the stomach is that you're anxious.
Oh, you're nervous.
People are going to judge me.
Yeah, you're nauseous and nervous and anxious. And so, there's some good descriptors there for you to think about. And have a think about, so what are some of the situations that I've been in recently, today, that I'm moving forward in, and how would I describe? Well, and think about, how do you want to be? What is the body language that you want to have? What are the feelings and what is the mindset? Why don't we actually have a look at language?
Okay.
Yeah, above the line language, Jen.
So above the line language are questions. So you would do a lot of what, when, how questions. And notice that we don't say a lot of why questions. I think why questions are more for a personal question for ourselves. I think when we ask ourselves why, it's powerful. But when we ask someone else why, it's judgmental. And I know it's quite
a fine line. Yeah.
But we want you to become masterful at self-leadership, and as well as leading others.
Yeah, and you can't forget context. Context, sometimes you are going to have to ask the why, but in general, we're talking generalities in terms of language.
Okay, so let's just give them an example of that, because some people might say, "Why did you do that?" as opposed to,
"Tell me more."
Yeah, that's right. Or what was your thinking that caused you to do that or to say that?
Oh, that's great, Jen, because that sounds less judgmental.
Yeah.
Because when you say why, you're questioning my judgment. So what are some of the other language statements?
I statements. You're taking responsibility.
Yeah.
So when you did this, I felt this, or I would like to say the impact of this on me was. So it's a lot of I statements.
The other thing that we always love is replacing a but with an and.
That's right. And I think we've done a podcast about that. And using inclusive language like us, we, ours, instead of you and them. They.
True,
so it's a more inclusive language. The other thing is that very solution-oriented language, like, what would it look like if? So very future-oriented
and what would
language.
it look like if we? So
that's right, even inclusive,
Okay. All right, so let's have a quick look at below-the-line language. So what would we be hearing people saying if they were using below-the-line language?
Yes, but. Yeah, I know you did that, but.
Oh, should. Should's a big one.
Yeah. Should, must.
Yeah.
And this absolute language, like I always come down with a cold in winter. I can never get a parking space. It's those kind of, motherhood statements that you go, oh, that's a red flag. So just notice when you're using those, that language, because what it's telling you is something isn't sitting right with you, because your language is the antecedents to your thoughts, which is an antecedents to what you actually believe about yourself and the world in general. The other things that we would do is, we can't afford to do this right now, and you'd be using a lot of no's. Instead of
no, we can't possibly.
That's
right. This always happens. So, very absolute language too. So we have given you some examples, and these are examples so why do we give people examples? We give people examples so that we can hopefully make this as practical as possible. And what we will do is we will give you a template with all of the phrases and the words that we've used in above the line, behaviour, thinking, language, body language, and all of those below the line, thinking, mindset, behaviour and body language examples. And then you say, okay, so what do I do with this? Well, what could a people leader do with this template that we're going to give them?
Okay, so what they could do is they could use it as a reflection tool. And so at the end of each day, they actually do a little bit of a checklist and physically mark what they have done above the line and what they have done below the line, and see, does it balance? Do you have more above the line or below the line attitudes, behaviours, mindsets and language? Or more below the line?
And it's a great team building activity. So you get your team together and you draw the line and you write above the line, then below the line, and then you can sort of discuss with the team what would be some examples of above the line thinking or behaviours that we would see people in this team doing if we were exhibiting above the line behaviours, and what would some of the behaviours or statements that we'd see in this team if it was below the line.
So you would enroll them, you would engage them in that, and then you would produce the document. So you would make it tangible, and then you would perhaps distribute it to the team so everyone can see it. You'd prominently display it, and then you'd have the conversation. So, okay, how do we make this really real? So I know that on Thursday we agreed to it, but how do we make it so we agree to it Friday and Monday and Tuesday and week after week?
So my view on that is that unless you continue to use this as a tool, then it just becomes something that's plastered on the wall that we did once that was a really interesting exercise. So unless you can use this in a practical way, and that is, when you do see the below the line behaviour, you are referring to it. Remember our above the line, below the line? I get a sense that was below the line because, finger pointing when you said wait and see, or it's not my job, or we'll wait and see. There are some examples of below the line that we agreed that we wouldn't do.
And even acknowledging above the line behaviour, because you want to you get what you focus on. So part of that is in your team meetings and in your one-on-one conversation. So how do you think you're tracking? How many times do you think you've gone below the line this week? Can I support you with it? So it's actually ingraining it in your conversations, in your team meetings and in your agendas. And then as a team, the next level is, so what happens if we actually go below the line and we're kind of getting more off track around what we want to do? How do we hold each other to account?
And some teams call it, how do we call each other on it? And I think that's definitely worthwhile a team having a conversation about, because some teams are going to be more open to the idea of being called on it. And what we always say is just practice, just give this a go, practice calling each other in ways like, oh, that was a bit above the line, Sarah, or below the line, Michael.
That's right, because if you want to make anything change, you need to have some accountability. You need to know what you're going to do and make it visible. The other thing I just wanted to quickly share, Michelle, is that some of the below the line behaviours are things like rudeness, not saying hello and ignoring people. And I remember we were in a workshop once and there was someone who never said hello when he walked in. And some people thought that was really rude, and then other people thought, well, that's his business. Like, he doesn't have to be, Mr. Social Joe saying hello to everyone. However, when we had a look at the company values, the values of the company was something around being engaged or encouraging, which is a really core value. And a core value of being engaged is saying hello and not ignoring people. And so it was kind of, how do we then, even though we have differences in the organisation, how do we allow everyone to be who they are in a respectful way? And part of that is, like you said, have the conversation.
That's right. And, and it may be that some people aren't aware that that's what they do.
Yeah.
And some people aren't prepared to change, which is perfectly okay too. However, if it is something that you think would benefit the team and benefit them, then why not have a gentle conversation around it?
Yeah. And the other interesting thing is, if you're not willing to change, is that above the line or below the line as well? Where is there flexibility in your style? Yeah. Okay. So I suppose, to wrap it up, we really encourage you to use the tool. And for those who are using it as a reflection piece, do it for 7 days, right? So 7 days, even on Saturday and even on Sunday, at the end of the day, do a checklist and see how much you've actually done above the line and below the line.
Okay. So for example, that might be, I've got all these words here, and you circle the ones that I did see myself or I experienced, like, I owned this problem, or I sought feedback, I used I statements. So actually try and remember what you actually did and thought.
Absolutely. Right. That's why doing it every day will actually put it on your radar.
That's right.
Yeah, which is really important, and then make it physical and tangible. And that's why we produce all these tools and resources, because...
So you'll use them.
Yeah, that's right. And because we live in a physical world. It's not just our mental world, thoughts and words and emotions, but then when you want to change, action it. Yeah.
Okay, great.
High five.
Till next time.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the People Leaders Podcast. For show notes and other resources, please visit us at peopleleaderspodcast.com. And while you're there, you can subscribe for future episodes so you can continue your own leadership journey. And please be sure to share this and other episodes with your friends and colleagues. The People Leaders Podcast is brought to you by the Experts on Air Podcast Network.